So now, what are the options? Iran's nuclear program is already in ruins. But could the United States now seize Iran's oil hub, Karg Island? According to the president, it's very much under consideration. Joining us now to break it all down, Middle East Forum Chief Strategist Jim Hanson and Vice President of National Security at Heritage Foundation, Victoria Coates. Victoria, you have spoken early and often about maximum economic and military, and I'd say diplomatic pressure against Iran. How is today different given the recent events and the president's remarks in Turkey? And what can we expect? We know what to expect from the U.S. What can we expect from Iran as their next move?
Well, Kellyanne, my friend, great to see you, and good to see you too, Jim. No, I think what's different here is precisely what you just said. We have a president for the first time who's bringing all three of those things to bear: the economic pressure, the military pressure, and the diplomatic pressure simultaneously to bear on Iran. And I think, actually, from my perspective, the economic pressure, what Secretary Bessent has done under Operation Economic Fury, is what ultimately is going to destroy Iran. They can't come back from what's happened to them. But that's only because President Trump was willing to do the military piece. He was willing to put all the pressure, which we saw tonight, going after bridges, going after electricity generation plants. This is what Iran can't stand. But then still saying, heck, you know, if you guys want to talk, we'll make a deal. But as the president said, there doesn't seem to be a decision maker in Iran right now. So we will keep that pressure up, and eventually, you know, Iran is going to buckle under the pressure.
Do you agree, Jim Hanson, that eventually Iran will buckle under the pressure? They got a respite to do the Khomeini funeral. They have an MOU, a ceasefire. The president's been playing ball that way. He obviously decapitated their leadership, decimated their Navy, destroyed their nuclear capability. So what is the next move for them? Are we just dealing with a theocracy that thinks they've got the upper hand somehow?
Yeah, I think they made a major miscalculation in assuming that they'd just be allowed to start selling oil, refill their coffers, you know, get some cash and refit for the next round. But they're assuming President Trump doesn't want to do anything before the midterms. And I don't think that's the way he looks at this. You know, he took the political risk to do this in the first place. He's not going to back down now. And I think if I was the leadership of Iran, I might be trying to bury myself a little lower than even that nuclear dust to keep my head down, because they're going to be looking for them. And I think when he says get this done, that puts on the table the one thing that wasn't before: regime change. They could end the Islamic Republic of Iran's run of tyranny, and that might be the best thing for everybody. That's what they need to be thinking about.
How likely do you think that is? I think the president's made very clear that's up to the people of Iran.
And that there are ways to do that. You know, people seem to assume that if we're going to do regime change in some way or support it, that means we're going to, you know, send the Navy SEALs to Tehran and try and overthrow the government and put U.S. boots on the ground. There are plenty of people in that country who do not want that government anymore, you know, terrorizing their lives and ruining their country. They are the ones who can do that. And if we help them and tell them that might be the best way for them to do this, that could be a way for it to happen.
And Victoria, you and I both worked for President Trump in the first term. We know one of the worst things you can say to him is, no one's ever done it that way, or that won't work, or it's been tried and failed. He heard 5 decades of failed policies, sending them pallets of cash, billions of dollars, being nice to them, having sanctions, maximum pressure, the JCPOA, you name it, the whole gamut, and yet they were on the doorstep of being the next North Korea, both with nuclear capability and the way they treat their people. But I want to ask you, obviously, Iran cannot be trusted or treated as a willing negotiating partner here. But knowing President Trump and the fact that he won't be boxed in, the fact that he's saying these negotiations have not borne fruit, if you were at the table with Kushner and Witkoff, what might you suggest that we do?
Well, Kellyanne, I mean, I think you're 100% right. The fastest way to get President Trump to do something is to lean over and say, sir, you can't possibly do this. And then he's going to go and do that. And that's what he did with Soleimani, for example. That's what he did with moving the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He broke the paradigm. And I think that's what we're going to see him do here again. And what I would do is broaden this out to the regional piece. Look at the other countries. Look at the meeting he had today with the president of Syria. Syria is no longer a henchman of Iran. Syria is highly imperfect, yes, but it's talking to the United States. It's on the margins of the NATO summit. Look at what's happening in Iraq. The new Iraqi prime minister, who will be visiting the United States next week, is now kicking out a bunch of the pro-Iranian members of parliament, very corrupt members of that government. Look at what's happening in Lebanon. They're talking directly to the Israelis. So I think what you're seeing is the president putting in a whole regional architecture around Iran, hemming them in. And so, if they suddenly come to their senses, which I agree with you, I don't think they will, but there is a deal on the table for them. But if they don't, they're going to be completely isolated, and we're going to be able to keep an eye on that nuclear program so it doesn't threaten the American people.
Victoria Coates, Jim Hanson, thank you.
All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.